But the fact is that even now, after all of these years of having women as colleagues, men, in many cases, are misunderstanding women in the workplace. And the reason I wrote the piece is because we're at this moment now where we've got this flood of information, books, conferences, networking groups for women that boil down to essentially how to successfully work with men.
In a men's world.
In a man's world.
Right.
And so these books are great, right? But the fact is that we're all talking to ourselves. Women are talking to ourselves. And my point is men need to be part of the conversation. And so what I set out to do was actually to talk to men. I wanted to talk to executives about what are the things that flummox you about the women you work with? Like, what are the things that frustrate you? And I wanted to sort of demystify women for the guys.
Well, I will say that this conversation, it kicked off a very contentious conversation around the office. We've had several discussions in some of our editorial meetings about it. And part of it is because you explained some of your frustrations from working with guys over those years, some of those well-intentioned guys. What are some of the things that drove you crazy, either as a manager or as someone who was working for a man? Right.
So it works both ways. Whether you're working for a guy or whether you are the boss of men, there are issues all around. So a lot of these things are just miscommunication issues. So one of the big ones is just in terms of communicating within a meeting, right? So and I'm speaking generally. Obviously, everyone is an individual. But if you speak generally, women are much more likely in a meeting. Men are more likely in a meeting to speak very declaratively. So, like, if there's a news meeting where you're talking about what should we talk about on Squawk Box, men in a meeting are more likely to say, we need to write about gas prices or talk about gas prices. This is the story. Women are more likely to sort of raise their hand and say, hey, has anybody noticed that gas prices are going down? What do we know about that, right? So women are more likely to pose it as a question than a statement. And very often, and I've seen this very often.
I've caught it with in my own situations too. I know that I'm not as declarative sometimes. I know that that's a problem. I think it's from the way we're brought up. We're brought up to be polite.
That's right.
And not ruffle feathers when you get into these things.
That's right. It stems all the way back from childhood. And it's not that the guys are trying to squish the women, but it is that the men very often don't hear the woman's point of view, or a man will make the point later and he gets the credit for the idea.
So then what becomes the answer? Because oftentimes when women are quote unquote assertive, then they're criticized for being too assertive, if you will.
That is correct. That is correct. So my point is that in the same way that we need to understand men in a meeting, they need to understand us. So I talked to men who are really working on this issue, and one executive I spoke to said that he makes a point within a meeting, when he runs the meeting, if a woman makes a point and it's overlooked, and then a man makes it later and everybody's nodding, he goes back to the woman and he says, you know what, you're the one who made the point. Why don't you elaborate on that for us? So it's going both ways.
One of the other things I noticed that you said was when you were a manager, you were surprised that the men were constantly coming in asking for raises, promotions, bigger offices, and women didn't do that.
Women didn't do that. I didn't do that. I had no idea this was going on, right? And you know, part of it is that women. There's actually a recent study that finds that men are 4 times more likely to ask for a raise than women. And when women do ask, they ask for 30% less than men.
Wow.
And it's a big reason why we have the wage gap. And the thing is that, these books, Lean In, Wonderful, all these books tell us this, we know we're supposed to do it, but we don't. And so, again, this is something that some of the executives that I spoke with, the men executives who I spoke to, said that they now encourage the women to at least negotiate when they're getting a promotion.
So that's back to training women to act differently, though.
No, this is training men. The men say that the men are proactively doing this. Mm-hmm. The other thing the other related issue is promotions, where women don't put their hands up for promotions. As one executive I spoke to said, he said, if I've got an opening and it's got 5 criteria and a woman has 4 of them, she'll sit on her hands. But the man with 1 of them is like raising his hand, like, pick me. and as he said, he now makes it a point to go and find the women in the organization who are qualified and say, you have to put your hand up. It doesn't mean you're going to get the job, but you need to be in the pool of people who have put their hand up. And so, again, it's just a matter of sort of understanding, getting qualified women. This is one of the issues of getting qualified women into the management pipeline.
Why do the managers who say that they are proactive about it, why do they do it? What do they get out of it?
Well, okay, so the bottom line here is a business case. So this is not about being PC at all. It's simply about when you have more women. All the research shows that when you have more women in senior leadership, the financial results improve. Sales, return on sales, return on investment, pretty much every financial metric improves when you have more women in senior leadership positions and on boards.